Happy New Year, Mark here and welcome to RC Hacker. Now today we're going to be looking at the Mobius Action Cam. I've been playing around with this recently so I can use it on my other channel filming wildlife and stuff, and I've found that if I adjust the focus I can get some really good macro footage out of this. Now as RC users you might be wanting to change the lens or something like that if you break it, and you will need to adjust the focus on these if you're going to change that sort of thing. So we're going to take this apart. I'll show you how to adjust the focus, and I will also modify this slightly so the focus is much easier to change. So if you want to go from a situation where you're using it at infinity focus, you can set it quickly, and likewise back to macro where you can focus down to about 5 centimeters. I haven't figured out the limits yet, but I think it's about 5 centimeters, which gives some really interesting footage. And in order to help with that, I've made this little rig just out of a bit of wood, and I'll show you what I plan to do with that. Anyway, let's pull this little baby apart. Let's go. Okay, so taking it apart is pretty easy. All we've got 2 screws on the back here, 1 and 2, and just a matter of, it's a Phillips head. And you'll have to avoid your warranty sticker there. Put a score mark in it, that's cut, and then the 2 parts should just pull apart like that, and you've got to watch out for the battery plug there, so just pull that battery plug out. You've got the battery on the top and then your main sensor unit here. Now, well, that seems to have just dislodged, but basically that just sits in there and is held together when this is put together. Now if you've got the fingernails for it, that's always good because it's kind of soft. This little part here should just flick up like so, and then you can pull out your lens and sensor assembly like so. On one side there's a tiny little Allen key there, and this should have come with your Mobius. If you didn't get this with your Mobius, if it didn't come with your Mobius, you'll find that it's 0.83 millimeters or 0.030 inches. Little hex driver there. So, and then just pop that in there and unscrew that a few times. You don't have to unscrew this all the way, but you do want to screw it far enough. Yeah, you'll find it's really quite tricky to get back in if somehow you unscrew it all the way. I'm just going to pop that in. Just 1 turn will do, I think. If you like, you can mark it just with a felt tip pen or some sort of blade, so you know where the factory focus was. Sorry, that wasn't very well done. I'm working behind the camera, so you can mark it like that. And this, it should move fairly freely. You don't have to put much force into it at all. Now, just for the sake of it, I'll unscrew it completely and we'll just have a look inside. I'm going to show you. This is a bit off topic, but if you want to modify this for, say, infrared, then there's a small filter in here that you can pull out, which blocks all the UV and infrared light hitting the sensor. However, if you do this, it will ruin it for normal color stuff. Now, there's quite a few turns on this lens, and there you go, it's popped out. You can see that glass there, that glass filter there on the back. I might just be able to, there's the sensor there, you can see that. While we're at it, I'll just get a close-up of that. Of course, it goes without saying you want to be in a dust-free environment. I wouldn't muck around too much, you know, holding the sensor up like this, because dust is just likely to fall down on top of it. But there you go. There's the sensor. You can see a few passives around it as well. So I'll just turn that back over. Now, like I said, you don't have to take the whole assembly completely off. But if you do want to attach other lenses, that's what you need to do. And apparently I've seen if you want to take this filter out, I think it's glued in, so I'm not going to do it myself, but apparently people have just smashed it and then picked out the bits. But there you go, that's a bit off topic. Anyway, we'll screw it back in again. Hopefully I haven't got too much gunk in there. If you look at our camera, it's quite well designed. There's one recess here and there's another one here, and that's where this part of the, that square part of the camera fits in. So you can either position it here, so the lens is back like this, or you can position it so it's sticking out a bit towards the front. So I'm going to put it in that position, and it should just fit in there nice and snug like that. Now the lens is sort of, it's sticking out a lot more, as you can see, but now we can easily focus it once we close it up. So I'll just put the ribbon cable back in. Again, you don't have to take this ribbon cable out. You can just unscrew it and move and loosen this little nut off, and then do that. So that's just a matter of pushing that in a little bit and then pushing that part down, and that locks it in. So in order not to lose that screw, I'm just going to dab that's a whole load of hot glue. I'm just going to dab a little bit of hot glue on that so it doesn't come apart on its own, and I'll never lose that way. So now it's just a matter of reassembling, making sure we put this plug in the right way. The way to make sure is you look at the holes. These two holes are up towards the top end, and so are those two pins. Plug our battery back in. And usually the screws here don't fall out. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake there. I forgot what I did with my last camera was I had to modify this here, because as you screw the lens in order for it to get to infinity focus again, it starts pushing against the case on the outside here. So it wasn't designed for this after all. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take it apart again, and we're going to cut away just a bit of this case on both sides in order that we can screw this all the way in. Let's do that quickly. Now, so we don't mess anything up, I'm going to take the circuit board out as well, and that means there's a screw there. There's another screw down the back by the USB, and there's another one just here. Take your SD card out if you've got an SD card in there. The trick to this is just push here on the heatsink, and she should lift up like that. Now in the bottom you've got your piece of heat transfer plasticky stuff, and then a bit of shielding, and your heatsink on the other side. Oh yeah, there's switches too, they'll probably fall out, so just be aware of them. So now we can cut away this plastic here. So get your sharp knife and your hobby skills and just shave away a bit of that plastic. So the sharper your knife, the easier this is going to be. Okay, so it looks like I've cut enough away from the top, but I didn't cut enough away from the bottom, so I'm going to have to do that again. You could also use, say, something like a Dremel with this, but if you do, just make sure you put your little lens well away, because little bits of hot plastic can stick to the front of your lens element. And I've stuffed it up again. I cut more away from the bottom instead of from the top. Alright, now we're talking. You want to be able to see. This is way too much. Didn't have to do it this much, but you can see now that that'll screw in just like that. That's about as far as it needs to go. Right, so that's all sorted. Let's hook this up to the computer and adjust the focus. Now I downloaded some drivers for this because I'm on OS X, and I got these drivers called MA Cam, USB webcam driver for Mac OS X. Now they do kind of work. I'm not sure if I actually needed these or not on mine, but I installed them anyway, and then I just ran first of all you got to get the camera, and if you're going to use it as a webcam, basically you plug your USB in, and if you don't have a card in it, it'll go straight into webcam mode. If you do have an SD card in it, you have to just press the camera button once, and then once the orange light is blinking like that, you know it's in webcam mode. So we'll just quickly open up Photo Booth, because this is the only application I found that worked with it. And there we have it. We've got a nice, fairly real-time feed here from our camera, and we can hopefully you can see from this other shot here. I've got plenty of things on the desk here going off into the distance, and I've got my camera here just so I can adjust the focus. So I'll change it for infinity, and obviously you probably want to do this outside rather than inside, but our infinity focus is about there, and I can keep, if you turn it anti-clockwise as you're looking at the camera, it'll focus on objects closer and closer. So you can see there, see it's focused on the bricks, then on the lens there, and then on the SD card there as well. And I can get even closer. Excuse me for the amount of light we got here. I'm still unscrewing it, and we're getting quite close there. You will notice that the image is flipped here because Photo Booth is sort of like a program where you can take silly photos of yourself and send them around and stuff like that. So we're looking at about 3 centimeters distance there, which for macro work is pretty good. Now for macro, surprisingly what works well is a small sensor size and this wide angle lens, and you can get some really good effects out of it. Right. Now, if you like, you can just calibrate it like this each time, but I don't want to have to hook it up to a computer and adjust it like this each time. So, as I mentioned before, I made this rig here. Now it's just a piece of wood. I cut this out on the circular saw, and there's a notch there, and I've got a bit of card on it with a hole in it. So the idea is that the camera just fits in, slots in like so, and then can slide forward, and then I've got the lens there sticking out the front. There we go. So now we're going to make some adjustments. Alright, a quick tip on getting infinity focus on this. This is the easiest way I've found. I'm looking out my window here, and I've got the ridge line in the background there. You can see that ridge line, and if I turn this, you can see it going blurry and then blurry again. So what you want to do is just keep going back and forth, get a feel for it, and then find out, and then get it on the halfway point. So that's your infinity focus, okay? Now, once you've found that, just turn it out a little bit, which is anti-clockwise as you look at the camera, just a little bit, and that will bring more of the stuff that's in the foreground into focus. So that'll maximize your depth of field. And then looking at the camera, I did mark it. Go back and look at your mark, and that will get you back to your factory mark. Pretty good. So you find your infinity focus, what's halfway in between there, and then you just bring the focus back just a little bit, and that'll bring more of the foreground stuff in focus. And at the moment, that screen there's in focus. That wall over there is in focus. So we've got a pretty big depth of field at the moment. We've got a depth of field of like infinity to a couple of meters, which is what you want. Now I'll put him back in our little mount, and then we'll do the finer points. All right, first thing I'm going to do is just mark that infinity point. I've attached cardboard to the front of this plastic card as well. So I'm going to choose, it's very difficult to do, you don't want to scratch your lens, but I'm going to make a mark on this part of the lens here as our main reference point. So that's our reference point, and then we just want to mark our card. Now it's best to look straight on at the lens so you can line it up, and with a finer pencil as possible. And that is our infinity mark. Now next distance. All right, next thing we're going to do is, I've got something out there that's 1 metre away. That is about 1 metre away. Let's put something nice and high and contrasty on that, and we'll just do our best to focus on that. Now unfortunately the live out webcam view isn't that big for me. It's only 640 by 480 or something. So if you really, really want to get fine adjustments on this, you're going to have to do it in another method and record to HD. So again, I'm on the live view, and it helps to have something nice and contrasty there to focus on. So we'll find that midpoint, and then we'll mark it on our, we'll mark it as we did before. Now we'll do something at 50 centimeters. Now 50 centimeters is very close to 1 meter there. 20 centimeters. I might just go and do 50 centimeters again, using the same battery thing there. Let's go down to 10 centimeters. Now let's go 5 centimeters. I'm going to measure from the actual measure just from the front of the lens. Now whether you measure from the front of the lens or the camera, it doesn't matter too much. Now that our focus subject is getting much bigger, it's getting much easier to actually get this in focus. So I would suggest that you have a nice high contrast target when you're doing like 1 meter and 50 centimeters. You might get better accuracy than I'm getting here. Now, it's 5 centimeters. Let's go with 2.5. Right, now it's getting difficult to actually do my measurements with a tape measure because I'm reaching really small measurements. So I'm going to pull the camera out and adjust this one and measure 2.5. So that's about 2.5 there. I'll put him back in my bracket and we'll mark it. Now my mark point isn't that great on this one because I can't actually mark it. Oh, I can just about put it in there. So I've had to bodge that one up, but that should make sense there, I hope. Does to me. As long as it makes sense to you, it doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to go pop the camera out again, and I'm going to go with 1 centimeter. So we were at 2.5, and I'm going to turn it quite a way around. Let's go to the 12 o'clock position, and then I'm going to figure out measure the distance and then write it down. So I'm just going to move the camera back and forth instead of changing the focus. That's about it, and we'll measure that with the calipers instead. And that works out to be about 1.8 or about 18 millimeters. So it's 18 millimeters marked on there, and I'm going to move around to the 9 o'clock position. Again, move our camera in and out until we achieve focus, and that's 13 millimeters there. And now I'm going to do one full anti-clockwise turn. So basically one full turn there. I've ended up with about 7 millimeters. So hopefully we can see that there. And let's do one more full turn. So this is another full turn, and I can barely get my calipers in there, and that's 4 millimeters. In order to go back to where we were at the start, I'm at 4 millimeters, one full turn, bring me to 7 millimeters, another full turn, bring me to 13 millimeters, three-quarters of a turn will give me to 2.5 centimeters, and then bring it around back to there. That should give me 5 centimeters there, back to normal. And yep, that looks about right. So now all I need to do is, when I want to use it, I'm typically going to have it set at infinity. I ended up putting two infinity marks here, the infinity minus and then the infinity proper. So I guess if I was doing stars, if I was going to try and focus this onto stars, I'd use infinity proper and then infinity minus. So once all your marks are on board, all you need to do is pick your distance. It's a logarithmic scale, so I just picked my focus distance. And for the really close in stuff, you're going to have to count how many turns. And then I can just pull him out. Pull him out, and she's ready to use. So thanks for watching. You've been watching RC Hacker. Please subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll catch you next time. If you've got any comments and stuff on this, let me know any other ideas down below. I'll try to reply to everything. Cheers. Set on the front. I think it comes off. There we go. So that's our radio module.